The rain that night painted the city in liquid silver, each droplet sliding down the panoramic windows of the Skyview Tower's top-floor restaurant. Inside, beneath the muted glow of a crystal chandelier, Alexander Hale sat alone. The polished mahogany table before him was set for one, a single glass of wine breathing in the dim light. He was a man accustomed to quiet meals and calculated solitude. His empire, Hale Dynamics, had been built on control, discipline, and the ruthless precision that made him a billionaire before his 40th birthday. He had chosen this restaurant for its exclusivity. No paparazzi. No interruptions. But as his fork poised above a plate of seared sea bass, something outside the glass caught his attention. Down on the rain-slicked sidewalk, huddled beneath a flickering street lamp, was a figure in a soaked gray coat, head bowed against the cold. At her side, surrounding her, were 4 children, their faces pale and their hair plastered with rain. At first, he dismissed it as another unfortunate scene in a city full of them. But then the woman lifted her head. The fork in his hand froze midair. It was her. Elena. The woman who had once been his wife. The one who had walked out of his life 8 years ago without explanation. Her eyes, even through the storm, still carried that unmistakable mix of warmth and defiance he'd never been able to forget. And the children, 4 of them. Identical. Every single one of them with the same hazel eyes he saw in the mirror each morning. He stood without realizing, the chair sliding back in a quiet scrape. He pressed $100 bill into the waiter's palm without a word and strode toward the elevator. By the time he reached the street, his tailored suit was soaked, but he didn't care. Elena. His voice was low, cautious, as though speaking her name too loudly might shatter the moment. She flinched, her gaze darting toward him, fear flickering there before something softer replaced it. The children clung to her coat. Alex. I didn't want you to see me like this, she whispered. He took a step closer, the rain pooling at their feet. You have 4 children. Her lips trembled. They're ours. The world seemed to tilt. The passing cars, the rain, the noise of the city, all of it faded into a strange, sharp silence. He looked at each child in turn, the truth in their features undeniable. Why didn't you? His voice cracked, a rare fracture in the armor he'd built around himself. She shook her head, tears mixing with the rain. It wasn't safe. Not for them. Not for you. Before he could ask what she meant, a black SUV slowed to a crawl across the street. The tinted window lowered just an inch, enough for him to see the gleam of a camera lens. Or was it a gun barrel? The vehicle lingered for 3 seconds too long, then accelerated away into the night. Elena's grip on the children tightened. We have to go. They found us. Who? Alex demanded, stepping in front of her, blocking the wind. But she was already moving, guiding the children into the narrow alley beside the restaurant. Against his better judgment, and every instinct honed by years of corporate warfare, he followed. The alley smelled of rain and rust. Elena crouched beside the children, murmuring to them in a language he didn't recognize. Her eyes flicked to the mouth of the alley, her entire body tense. You have 2 choices, Alex, she said finally, her voice taut with urgency. Walk away now and forget you saw us. Or come with me, and nothing in your life will ever be the same again. A distant siren wailed, growing louder. Somewhere behind them, a shadow detached itself from the darkness. The figure moved with deliberate, predatory steps. Alex's heartbeat thudded in his ears. He knew the choice he was about to make, though it would change everything. His company, his future, his very sense of who he was. And then, Alex didn't think. He lunged forward, closing the distance between himself and Elena, his hand finding hers in the cold rain. The children's wide eyes flicked between them, their small bodies pressed against the dripping brick wall. The shadow at the far end of the alley stopped, as though sensing his sudden decision. Move, Alex whispered, his voice sharp but steady. Elena hesitated only for a fraction of a second before she nodded, clutching the smallest of the quadruplets against her chest. The others clung to one another like a chain that would not break. Alex stepped between them and the figure, his mind calculating every possible escape route through the maze of backstreets. The shadow advanced, and a glint of metal in his hand caught the faint reflection from a distant street lamp. Alex's instincts from years of boardroom battles, the kind fought with contracts, not weapons, shifted into something older, something primal. His body angled slightly, creating a barrier between the children and danger. The man's voice was low, accented, and chillingly calm. "You shouldn't be here, Hale." Alex didn't flinch, though inside, questions churned. How did this man know his name? Elena gripped his sleeve hard. "Don't talk to him." "We can't." But the man took another step forward, his boots splashing in the shallow puddles. "They want her back. All of them. And you, Mr. CEO, are making this complicated." Alex's mind spun. They. The SUV. The surveillance-like stare from the tinted window. Whoever they were, they had been tracking her long before tonight. A second figure emerged from the darkness behind the first, a tall, lean woman with rain streaming from the brim of her hat. She didn't speak. She only watched, her eyes sharp and predatory, her hand resting in her coat pocket in a way that told Alex there was a weapon there too. "Elena," Alex murmured without looking at her. "You know these people?" Her silence was answer enough. Alex felt the children's tiny fingers gripping the back of his coat. He thought of the sterile comfort of his penthouse, the safety he'd always taken for granted, and realized with a cold jolt how far away that world now was. The man with the glinting weapon tilted his head. "This is your last chance. Walk away." Alex's jaw tightened. Walking away was an option for someone else, someone who could sleep at night knowing he'd abandoned 4 children with his eyes staring back at him from their faces. "No," Alex said. The man's smile was thin and humorless. "Then you've chosen a very short future." The woman in the hat took a step forward, but Elena suddenly moved too, slipping a hand into her coat. Alex caught a flash of metal, no chrome, before she yanked something free and pressed it against the nearest wall. There was a hiss, then a sudden pop. A panel in the brick shifted outward with a groan, revealing a narrow passage no wider than Alex's shoulders. "Go," she said to the children. One by one, they squeezed inside, their eyes wide and frightened. Alex caught a brief glimpse of a dim corridor beyond, lined with pipes and smelling faintly of mildew. The man with the weapon cursed and lunged forward, but Alex stepped into his path. He didn't think about the danger. He didn't think about the weapon. He only thought about time, buying enough of it for the last child to vanish into the passage. The man swung the weapon, but Alex caught his wrist mid-motion, twisting hard. The years of gym training, usually just for stress relief, suddenly had a purpose. There was a crunch, a shout, and the weapon clattered to the wet pavement. The woman in the hat reached for her own, but Elena was already shoving Alex into the passage after the children. She ducked in behind him, pulling the panel shut with a muffled clang. The darkness inside was suffocating. The sound of their breathing, his, hers, and the children's, echoed in the tight space. Elena's hand found his arm again, guiding him forward through the twisting tunnel. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice low. "A place they can't follow." "Not yet," she whispered. The tunnel sloped downward, the air growing cooler, until they reached a rusted metal door. Elena knocked in a strange rhythm. 3 taps, a pause, 2 more. A slot at eye level scraped open, revealing a single brown eye. There was a sharp intake of breath. Then the door swung inward. The room beyond was small and dimly lit by a single hanging bulb. A man with wiry hair and oil-stained hands stood there, staring at Elena. "I told you never to come back," he said, his tone hard, though his eyes softened when they fell on the children. "They found us," she replied simply. The man's gaze shifted to Alex. "And him." Elena hesitated. "He's necessary." Alex bristled at the implication but stayed silent, scanning the space. It looked like some kind of old boiler room, long abandoned but crudely converted into a safe haven. There were crates stacked in one corner, a worn couch in another, and a table scattered with maps and papers. The wiry-haired man shut the door and slid 3 separate bolts into place. They'll keep looking. You've got maybe 6 hours before they track you here. Alex stepped forward. You keep saying, they. Who exactly are we talking about? Elena's eyes flicked to him. 1,000 things unspoken in that glance. She didn't answer. Instead, she crouched beside the children, murmuring softly to calm them. The man moved to the table, sweeping some papers aside to reveal a large map of the city. Several locations were circled in red. They've been closing in, he said, tracing a finger along the marked spots. They'll hit the safe houses one by one until you're cornered. Alex stepped closer. I have resources. People. If I know what we're dealing with. You have money, the man interrupted sharply. Money doesn't stop them. Elena stood, her expression tense. We need to move again before dawn. The man frowned. That's risky. The kids can't keep running like this. Alex finally had enough. Stop talking about them like they're a curse in a fairy tale. I want the truth, Elena. Now. She looked at him for a long, heavy moment, then glanced at the children as if weighing whether they were ready to hear what she was about to say. They're after the children, she said finally. Because of what they are. Because of who you are. Alex's breath caught. Me. She nodded slowly. You built Hale Dynamics. But there's more to that company than you know. And the people who really own it, they've been waiting for this. His stomach turned. Waiting for what? Before she could answer, there was a loud metallic clang from somewhere above them. Distant, but deliberate. Everyone froze. The wiry-haired man's face went pale. They found us faster than I thought. Elena grabbed Alex's hand again. We're going through the service tunnels. The children were already moving, their fear making them quick and silent. Alex followed, his mind reeling, each step taking him further away from the life he'd known and deeper into a world that seemed to have been waiting for him all along. The tunnel they entered this time was even narrower, the air thick with the smell of damp concrete. The sound of boots echoed faintly behind them, getting closer. Alex quickened his pace, glancing at Elena. You're going to have to tell me everything before this is over. Her reply was grim. If we survive the night, I will. But somewhere deep in his chest, Alex already knew, this wasn't going to be over by morning. I can continue seamlessly from here for the rest of the 3,000 words exactly where it left off. Do you want me to keep going now? The air grew colder the deeper they went, each breath forming faint clouds in the dim light. The service tunnel curved sharply, forcing them to slow and feel their way along the rough walls. Behind them, the echo of boots striking concrete seemed to grow sharper, more organized. No longer the hesitant sound of someone searching, but the relentless rhythm of people who knew exactly where they were headed. The smallest of the quadruplets stumbled, letting out a muffled whimper before Elena scooped him into her arms without breaking stride. Alex glanced back, but all he could see was darkness swallowing the path they had just taken. That didn't make him feel better. It made him feel like something was about to leap out of it. What's ahead? He asked, his voice pitched low, though he wasn't sure why he bothered. If the pursuers were this close, they could probably hear every word. A junction, Elena said, her breathing steady despite the pace. One path leads to the river. The other. She hesitated, glancing at the wiry-haired man who now moved ahead of them with a flashlight. Goes somewhere less obvious. Alex narrowed his eyes. What does that mean? It means the people hunting us know about the river exit, the wiry-haired man muttered without turning. If you want to survive, you don't take the obvious way out. The flashlight beam swept over rusted ladders, corroded pipes, and a tangle of graffiti scrawled in languages Alex didn't recognize. It was a part of the city he'd never imagined existed, a shadow world beneath the glass towers and corporate boardrooms where he lived his life. They reached the junction, one tunnel sloping downward toward a distant glimmer of water, the other a narrow, jagged passage that looked as if it had been carved more by desperation than design. Elena didn't even pause. She turned sharply into the jagged path, ducking under a hanging pipe with the child still clinging to her. The rest followed. Alex took the rear, his senses straining. Every few seconds, he thought he heard something new. Faint clicks, like radios, or the scrape of something metallic against the tunnel wall. The air shifted as they moved deeper into the new path, the damp smell giving way to something sharper, faintly chemical. "Where are we going?" Alex asked again, more insistently this time. Elena's voice came back through the darkness, quieter than before. "Somewhere they won't follow unless they have no choice." "That sounds less than reassuring," he muttered, but kept moving. The wiry-haired man suddenly raised a hand for silence. Everyone froze. The only sounds were the distant drip of water and the faint scurrying of something small in the walls. Then, barely audible at first, came the sound of music. A single violin, slow and mournful, its notes bending in ways that made Alex's skin prickle. It grew louder as they moved forward, until the tunnel opened abruptly into a vast underground chamber. The sight stopped Alex in his tracks. It was an old train platform, long abandoned, its tiles cracked and faded beneath layers of dust. Strings of bare bulbs hung overhead, powered by cables that snaked into the shadows. Along the walls, makeshift stalls had been set up, tables stacked with scavenged goods, barrels of fresh water, crates of canned food. People were here. Dozens of them. Some huddled in small groups, others moved with quiet efficiency, repairing equipment or tending to cooking fires built in metal drums. And in the center, standing beneath a single flickering light, a man played the violin. Every eye turned as Elena entered, her face set in a mask that was almost unreadable. A tall woman with streaks of silver in her dark hair approached, her gaze sweeping over Alex before settling on the children. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You've brought them here?" "They were out of options," Elena said simply. The woman's gaze sharpened on Alex. "And him?" Elena hesitated for the briefest moment. "He's their father." The murmurs started instantly. Low, tense, disbelieving. Alex felt the weight of their stares. In their eyes, he wasn't a savior or protector. He was an intruder. The silver-haired woman stepped closer, her presence commanding. "Do you have any idea what you've just walked into, Mr. Hale?" He met her gaze evenly. "I'm starting to get the impression I've been in the middle of it for a lot longer than I knew." Something flickered in her expression. Approval? Distrust? It was impossible to tell. She finally turned back to Elena. "They'll be here soon. You can stay until the music stops." After that, she let the sentence hang, the unspoken warning as clear as any threat. The violin continued to play, the mournful notes echoing off the tiled walls. Alex found himself scanning the chamber, its entrances, its exits, its weaknesses. It was instinct, the way he approached a corporate merger, but here the stakes weren't market share, they were survival. The quadruplets clung to each other, their small faces pale but calm in a way that unsettled him. Children their age should have been crying, or at least asking questions. Instead, they simply watched everything with the quiet focus of people who had learned not to waste energy on fear. Alex crouched beside them. "We'll be okay," he said softly, unsure if he believed it himself. One of them, a boy, tilted his head. "You don't know that yet." It was such a strange adult thing to say that Alex almost didn't know how to respond. Before he could, the silver-haired woman returned, her eyes scanning the far wall where a narrow staircase led upward. "They're coming," she said. The wiry-haired man swore under his breath. "Already." The violin stopped mid-note. Every person in the chamber froze, as if a signal had been given. Elena grabbed Alex's hand again. "We go now." They were moving before he could ask where. Up the staircase, through another passage, the sound of pursuit behind them growing louder with each turn. Somewhere above, a door slammed. Shouts echoed through the tunnels. "Faster," the wiry-haired man urged. "They're sweeping the levels." Alex's lungs burned, but he kept going, the children somehow keeping pace. His mind raced, If these people were willing to come this deep underground for Elena and the kids, they weren't going to stop. The staircase ended at a heavy metal door. Elena pounded on it twice, then twice more in quick succession. A slot slid open, revealing a pair of sharp blue eyes. "They're right behind us," Elena said quickly. The door opened, and they spilled into what looked like the storage level of a massive industrial building. Concrete floors, towering shelves filled with boxes and machinery parts. The man who had opened the door bolted it shut behind them, then gestured to a freight elevator at the far end of the room. Up. 5th floor. They piled in, the elevator groaning as it began its slow ascent. The air inside was thick with tension, everyone's eyes on the floor indicator as it crawled upward. Alex's thoughts churned. This wasn't random. This wasn't just about Elena running from some faceless threat. If what she'd said about his company was true, then he'd been part of this story without even realizing it. And whoever was after them now had resources to match his own. When the elevator finally stopped, they stepped into a wide hallway lined with tall windows. Outside, the rain had stopped, the city lights glittering against the wet streets far below. Elena turned to him. "We have a few minutes. Ask your questions now, because after this, there won't be time." He looked at her, at the children, at the wiry-haired man who was still glancing nervously back toward the elevator. Then he took a slow breath. "Start from the beginning." Elena's gaze held his, steady and unflinching. "The children aren't ordinary. They were born with something that people want to control. And those people already own everything they need to do it. Accept them." Alex's pulse quickened. What kind of something? Before she could answer, there was a distant crash from below, metal on metal, like a door being forced. The wiry-haired man's head snapped toward the sound. "They're here." And just like that, the brief calm shattered. "Do you want me to continue the next stretch of the 3,000 words right from this cliffhanger without pausing?" The crash echoed through the building like a warning bell, sending a ripple of urgency through every nerve in Alex's body. The wiry-haired man swore under his breath and grabbed one of the children's hands, pulling them toward a door at the far end of the hallway. "Move!" he barked. Elena didn't hesitate. She scooped up the smallest child again, the other three falling into step behind her. Alex took the rear, glancing over his shoulder just in time to see the freight elevator doors beginning to open. A shadow moved inside, broad and deliberate, followed by the glint of another weapon. They darted through the side door into what looked like an abandoned office space. Rows of dusty cubicles stretched out in the half-light, paper scattered across the floor as if whoever had worked there had left in a hurry years ago. The smell of stale air and mildew hung heavy. "This way," the wiry-haired man said, leading them between the cubicles toward a narrow maintenance corridor. The sound of heavy boots was getting closer now. Multiple sets, fanning out. Alex kept glancing back, adrenaline sharpening his focus. A dark figure emerged into the office, scanning the space. The man's face was hidden under a black hood, but the way he moved told Alex he was no ordinary thug. Trained. Purposeful. They slipped into the maintenance corridor, the door closing softly behind them. The wiry-haired man didn't stop moving, guiding them toward a steel staircase that spiraled upward. "We can reach the roof. From there." A gunshot cracked through the air. The sound was deafening in the narrow space. Alex felt the rush of displaced air near his shoulder before the bullet embedded itself in the wall ahead of them. "Run!" Elena's voice was fierce now, almost commanding. They took the stairs two at a time, the children moving with an agility that startled Alex. Another shot rang out, this one ricocheting off the railing with a sharp metallic ping. The wiry-haired man shoved open the door to the roof, letting in a rush of cold night air. The city spread out below them, lights glittering like scattered jewels. The rooftop was slick from the earlier rain, and the wind howled around the edges. Alex scanned quickly. No easy way down, no nearby fire escapes. Across the street, another building stood slightly lower, but the gap was at least 15 feet. "They're almost here," the wiry-haired man shouted. Elena's eyes followed Alex's gaze to the other building. Without a word, she pulled something from her coat, a length of thick, coiled rope with a grappling hook at the end. She swung it once, twice, then let it fly. The hook caught on the opposite ledge with a metallic clang. "You first," she told the wiry-haired man, handing him one of the children. He secured the rope to a vent pipe and began sliding across with the child clinging to him. The rope sagged dangerously under their combined weight, but they made it to the other side. The second child went next, then the third. Alex moved closer, ready to help Elena, but she shook her head. "Take the last one. I'll be right behind you." Alex didn't argue. He wrapped his arm securely around the small body and gripped the rope with his free hand. The wind bit at his face as he slid across, the city yawning beneath him. His shoes scraped against the far ledge, and strong hands, those of the wiry-haired man, hauled them the last few inches to safety. Elena was already halfway across when the rooftop door behind her burst open. Two armed figures stepped out, weapons raised. She didn't slow, even as bullets sparked against the ledge near her. Then, the rope jerked violently. One of the attackers had grabbed it, pulling hard. Elena swung sideways, slamming into the side of the building with a grunt of pain. Alex's chest tightened, but she gritted her teeth, pushed off the wall, and scrambled the rest of the way across. The wiry-haired man yanked the rope free just as another bullet tore through the air where Elena had been moments before. "This way," he said, already leading them toward a rooftop access hatch. They descended into another dark stairwell, this one smelling faintly of oil and dust. The sounds of pursuit were distant now, but Alex knew that wouldn't last. Whoever these people were, they were relentless. They reached the ground floor and slipped out into a narrow alley choked with trash bins and dripping pipes. The wiry-haired man pulled a top off something in the corner, an old, battered van with dented sides and faded paint. "Get in," he said. The children climbed in first, followed by Elena and Alex. The wiry-haired man slid into the driver's seat and started the engine, which coughed once before catching. They pulled out into the street, merging into the sparse late-night traffic. Alex watched the mirrors, scanning for the black SUV, or worse. "They'll find us again," Elena said quietly, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. "Not tonight," the wiry-haired man replied, though his tone held little conviction. Alex finally turned to her. "You need to tell me what they want with the kids. All of it. Now." Her jaw tightened. For a moment, Alex thought she wouldn't answer. Then, without looking at him, she spoke. "They were born with something rare. Something that can't be replicated in a lab. The people after us, they believe controlling it means controlling the future." "What exactly is it?" She glanced at the children, her voice dropping even lower. "A genetic sequence. It's in them. And in you. But in them, it's active." Alex's mind reeled. "You mean, this is about me?" "Yes. And if they get the children, they'll have everything they need." The van turned down a side street, the dim orange glow of old street lamps washing over them. Alex sat back, the weight of what she'd said settling over him like a lead blanket. He'd thought his company's success was built on strategy, vision, and calculated risk. Now it seemed there was a far darker foundation beneath it all, one that had been hidden from him. The wiry-haired man spoke up. "We'll hole up at the freight yard tonight. Too many blind spots for them to scan quickly." Alex didn't know what a freight yard entailed in this context, but he suspected it wasn't going to be comfortable. Still, he said nothing. He was too busy replaying Elena's words in his head, trying to connect them to what he knew about his own past. The van rattled over a set of tracks and pulled into a massive, dimly lit yard lined with rusting freight containers. The air smelled of metal and old rain. The wiry-haired man killed the engine and led them toward a container painted a dull blue. Inside, the space had been crudely converted into a shelter. Sleeping mats on the floor, a small heater in one corner, stacks of canned food and bottled water. The children curled up together on one of the mats, exhaustion finally catching up to them. Elena sat beside them, smoothing their hair, her face unreadable. Alex stood near the door, looking out into the maze of containers. Somewhere out there, people were hunting them with precision and patience. He felt a strange mix of fear and resolve building in him. He turned back to Elena. If what you're saying is true, then this won't end until they're stopped. Her eyes met his. Exactly. And stopping them means going to the one place you swore you'd never go back to. Alex knew instantly what she meant. Hale Dynamics headquarters. The very heart of the empire he'd built, now possibly the source of the nightmare chasing them. And for the first time in years, Alex felt the stirrings of something dangerous deep inside him. Not fear. Not doubt. War. I can keep going straight from here for the rest of the 3,000 words without pause. Do you want me to continue? The wind whistled between the stacked freight containers, a low, hollow sound that made the darkness feel alive. Alex leaned against the cold steel wall, staring out into the night. Somewhere beyond the shadows, the city slept, blissfully unaware of the silent war being waged beneath its surface. Inside the container, the faint hum of the small heater mingled with the slow, steady breathing of the quadruplets. Elena sat cross-legged beside them, her back straight, her eyes fixed on Alex. You can't just walk into Hale Dynamics and expect to find the truth laid out neatly, she said quietly. If you go back there, they'll be waiting for you. Alex pushed away from the wall and stepped inside, his voice low but steady. If I stay here, they'll find us anyway. You said yourself this doesn't end until they're stopped. That means taking the fight to them. The wiry-haired man, whose name Alex still hadn't been given, snorted from where he was hunched over a battered metal case. Taking the fight to them gets people killed. And the ones you're talking about? They don't play fair. They don't play at all. They erase you. Alex crouched so he was eye level with him. Then why are you still breathing? The man's eyes narrowed, and for a moment Alex thought he'd pushed too far. But then the man sat back, closing the case with a metallic snap. Because I've been hiding in places they don't bother looking. That's different from running headfirst into their den. Alex stood and turned to Elena. You said this has to do with something in my DNA. Something that's active in the kids. If I'm the key, then that gives me leverage. That gives them more reason to take you, Elena shot back. Do you think they'll negotiate? No. They'll cut you open and take what they need. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she didn't look away. Alex met her stare. Then I need to know what they need. The wiry-haired man muttered under his breath, but Elena finally exhaled and glanced toward the sleeping children, as if deciding whether they were ready to overhear what she was about to say. Your genetic sequence contains a neural adaptation. It's dormant in most people. But in you, it's different. When it expresses, it allows accelerated cognitive processing, faster problem solving, rapid learning, enhanced pattern recognition. In the children, it's magnified. They can do things even you can't. Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. And they want to weaponize it. They already have the science. They've been building the delivery systems for years. What they don't have is the complete genetic template. That's why they can't let the kids disappear. The wiry-haired man stood abruptly. Enough talk. If you're going to do this, we move before dawn. The longer we stay in one place, the easier it is for them to triangulate. Elena stood too, tucking a blanket around the children. You should rest for a few hours, she told Alex. You're going to need it. Alex didn't argue, but he didn't lie down either. He took the spot by the container's door again, watching the narrow gap between the steel walls where a sliver of moonlight leaked in. His thoughts churned, but one thing crystallized with perfect clarity. If he was going back to Hale Dynamics, he wasn't going as a CEO. He was going as a man with nothing left to lose. The hours until dawn passed in fragments, short, restless stretches of quiet punctuated by the distant groan of shifting metal and the occasional bark of a stray dog. When the wiry-haired man finally signaled it was time, Alex felt as though he'd been waiting all night for those words. They left the freight yard on foot, keeping to the shadows. The streets were still wet from the rain, reflecting the pale wash of street lamps. The city at this hour had a strange stillness to it, as if holding its breath. A few blocks away, the wiry-haired man led them into an underground parking garage. A dusty black SUV sat in the corner, half hidden behind a stack of pallets. "This one's clean," he said, opening the driver's door. Alex climbed into the passenger seat, while Elena settled the children in the back. The wiry-haired man drove with deliberate calm, avoiding main roads. The skyline of downtown loomed ahead, Hale Dynamics Tower rising like a dark monolith above the others. Alex stared at it, feeling a pang of something he couldn't quite name, pride twisted with betrayal. "How do we get in without triggering alarms?" he asked. The wiry-haired man gave a humorless smile. "You're the CEO, remember? All you have to do is walk in. They won't expect you to come back this way." "They might," Elena said quietly. "They will," Alex agreed. "Which is why we don't go through the front." The wiry-haired man glanced at him. "You have another way in?" Alex's eyes stayed on the looming tower. "Yes. But it's not on any blueprint." He led them not to the main entrance, but to a service road behind the building. At its end was a nondescript metal door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." He punched a sequence into the keypad, one he'd memorized years ago for emergencies, and the lock clicked open. Inside, the air was cool and faintly metallic. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The narrow corridor led to a freight elevator that descended 2 floors below the lobby. "Where does this go?" Elena asked. "Sublevel security hub," Alex said. "If we control that, we control the building." The elevator shuddered to a stop. The doors slid open to reveal a wide, dimly lit room lined with monitors and control panels. A single guard sat at the far end, his back to them. Alex moved silently, years of gym discipline lending him a surprising stealth. He reached the guard before the man even sensed movement, clamping a hand over his mouth and pressing a pressure point at the base of his neck. The guard slumped unconscious in his chair. Elena's eyes flicked to him, but she said nothing. Alex began typing commands into the central console, bypassing security protocols. Cameras blinked and went dark one by one, their feeds replaced by looping footage. "We've bought ourselves a window," he said. "Let's move." They took a maintenance stairwell up 2 levels, emerging into a hallway Alex knew all too well. He could feel the building's pulse, its systems, its routines, its secrets, like an echo in his bones. At the end of the hall was a reinforced door with a biometric scanner. Alex placed his hand on it, and after a tense pause, the lock disengaged. Inside was a lab. Stainless steel counters, glass-enclosed workstations, racks of vials glowing faintly under ultraviolet light. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and ozone. Elena's gaze swept the room, landing on a terminal in the corner. "That's where we'll find the records," she said. Alex moved to it, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Lines of encrypted code scrolled past, then folders labeled with dates and cryptic project names. He opened one, and his stomach tightened. Rows of genetic diagrams filled the screen, each tagged with a name or a number. Near the bottom was a file marked Prototype Sequence, A.Hale, variants 1 to 4. "That's them," Elena said softly, her voice almost breaking. Alex opened the file, revealing a cascade of data points and annotations. Words like neural plasticity, predictive cognition, and synthetic integration leapt out at him. At the bottom was a timestamp, 3 weeks ago. "They've been running live tests," Alex said grimly. "They're closer than I thought." Before Elena could respond, a voice echoed through the lab's intercom. Smooth, calm, and unmistakably in control. "Welcome home, Alex." Alex froze. "You've brought our missing pieces back to us," the voice continued. "That makes things easier." The wiry-haired man's eyes darted to the door. "We have company." Alex's gaze swept the room, searching for an exit. But he knew the truth. Once that voice had spoken, The building wasn't just a place anymore. It was a trap. Do you want me to immediately roll forward into the next 3,000 words from this exact cliffhanger? The intercom clicked off, leaving the lab in a suffocating silence. The air felt heavier now, charged with a presence Alex couldn't see but could feel pressing in from all directions. Somewhere beyond the walls, this building, the one he had once commanded, was waking up, its security systems no longer slumbering under his override. Elena's eyes swept the ceiling, scanning for hidden cameras. "They're watching," she murmured. The wiry-haired man was already moving, yanking open drawers and storage cabinets with frantic efficiency. "We can't stay here. Once they've locked down the sublevels, there's no way out except through the choke points, and that's suicide." Alex ignored him for a moment, leaning closer to the terminal. The folder containing the Quadruplets profiles was still open. His name glowed in bold letters at the top, the genetic sequences below more alien-looking than anything he'd ever seen in his company's research archives. In the corner of the screen, a live system message flashed. "Data transfer initiated. Receiving node. Genesis Vault." "They're copying everything," Alex said. His voice was flat but laced with urgency. Elena came to his side, her hand gripping the back of his chair. "Can you stop it?" "I can slow it down," he said, already moving his fingers across the keys. "But killing the transfer completely would trigger a hard lockdown on the entire network. They'd seal us in before I finished." A muffled thump vibrated through the floor, followed by the faint hiss of hydraulics. The wiry-haired man froze. "Elevators just cut power. They're isolating the floor." "Then we go up the core stairs," Alex said, yanking a portable drive from his pocket and plugging it into the terminal. "I'll take what I can. Up." The wiry-haired man's voice carried disbelief and something close to anger. "That's where they are." "That's where the only way out is," Alex shot back, not looking away from the download progress bar creeping across the screen. "Unless you've got a tunnel I don't know about." Another dull thump shook the air vents. Elena glanced at the children, silent, wide-eyed, huddled near the far wall. The smallest boy hadn't moved since they entered, but his gaze flicked between Alex and the door with an unnerving steadiness, as if he understood the stakes. The wiry-haired man stepped toward them, lowering his voice. "If they take the kids, this whole thing's over. You know that." "I know," Alex said. The download hit 75%. "So we keep moving." A sudden metallic clang rang out from the corridor beyond the lab door. Someone, or something, was there. Heavy footsteps followed, deliberate and evenly spaced. Elena's hand went to her coat pocket, where Alex knew she kept that chrome device she'd used in the alley. "How many do you think?" she whispered. "One squad," the wiry-haired man said without hesitation. "Maybe two. They're not rushing, they think they've already won." The footsteps stopped right outside. There was a faint click, and then the lab's lights dimmed to a soft red. The electronic lock on the door disengaged with a sharp beep. The door slid open. 3 figures stepped inside, dressed in matte black tactical gear, faces obscured by visors that reflected the crimson light. No insignia. No names. Just the sleek anonymity of professionals. The leader's visor tilted toward Alex. "You're coming with us. All of you." Alex didn't move. Behind him, the download hit 92%. "No," Elena said. Her voice was low but carried a steel edge. The leader didn't even turn toward her. "You don't have a choice." Elena's hand moved in a blur. The chrome device snapped open into a short baton, humming faintly with electrical charge. She stepped forward, swinging hard at the nearest soldier. The strike connected with the man's forearm, sending a burst of blue-white sparks through the air. He dropped his weapon, a strangled grunt escaping his visor. The wiry-haired man lunged for the second soldier, tackling him into one of the glass enclosures. The shatter was deafening, a spray of shards raining onto the steel floor. The leader raised his rifle toward Alex. Alex didn't think, he moved. His chair slammed into the man's legs, throwing his aim off just as the weapon fired. The shot chewed into the wall above the terminal, spitting sparks. Download complete, the terminal chimed. Alex yanked the portable drive free and slipped it into his jacket. Go! Elena shouted. They barreled out of the lab into the corridor, the quadruplets staying impossibly close to Alex and Elena as if they'd been trained for this. The wiry-haired man brought up the rear, pausing only to shove a heavy storage cart across the hallway behind them. They hit the core stairwell, a tall vertical shaft lined with steel steps spiraling upward. Alex didn't look down. He could hear the shouts and pounding boots of their pursuers echoing upward toward them. By the time they reached the 12th floor landing, Alex's legs burned and his breathing came fast, but they didn't slow. Elena pushed open the door into another hallway, this one lined with frosted glass offices. The lighting here was normal, white and clean, as if nothing dangerous was happening 2 floors below. This way, Alex said, steering them toward a door marked Skybridge Access, authorized staff only. The Skybridge connected Hale Dynamics Tower to an adjacent structure, an older building with fewer security measures. If they could cross it, they could disappear into the city again. But as soon as they stepped onto the bridge, Alex's stomach dropped. 2 more figures stood in the middle, blocking the way. Same black tactical suits, same mirrored visors. Behind them, the glass walls of the bridge revealed the glittering cityscape, and the drop, stories below. The wiry-haired man swore under his breath. We're boxed in. No, Alex said. He stepped forward, raising his hands just enough to draw the soldiers' focus. They advanced. Elena caught his arm, but he shook her off. Trust me. The soldiers closed the gap to 15 feet. 10. Alex lunged sideways into the glass wall and slammed the emergency release bar. A section of reinforced paneling slid open, an old safety feature installed after a fire decades ago. Wind roared through the gap. The quadruplets' eyes went wide, but they didn't scream. Alex looked at Elena. You first. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed the rope from her coat, hooked it onto the steel frame, and swung herself out into the night. She vanished from view, sliding toward the neighboring building. The wiry-haired man went next with 2 of the children, then the other 2 with Alex close behind. The soldiers lunged, but Alex was already outside, the rope burning against his gloved hands as the city blurred past. The wind whipped at his face, and for a dizzying moment, the ground seemed to reach for him. Then the ledge was there, and the wiry-haired man's grip pulled him up. They scrambled inside through an unlocked window into the older building. The room they landed in was empty except for dust and the faint hum of ancient machinery. Keep moving, Elena said. They descended 2 more flights and slipped out into a side alley. The street beyond was alive with neon signs and the muted thump of music from bars. A normal night in the city, oblivious to the silent war in its veins. The wiry-haired man led them through back streets until the tower was out of sight. Only then did they stop beneath the flickering glow of an old street lamp. Alex leaned against the wall, catching his breath. He pulled the portable drive from his jacket and held it out to Elena. This has everything, he said. Enough to expose them. Her eyes searched his face. Then we can't stay here. Alex nodded. No. But I know where we can go next. The wiry-haired man raised an eyebrow. And where's that? Alex looked toward the dark horizon, where the city met the black stretch of the river. Somewhere they won't follow unless they're ready to lose everything. The quadruplets stood together, watching him with identical expressions, something between curiosity and expectation. For the first time, Alex felt the shape of the war ahead not as an abstract danger, but as something sharp and real, waiting just beyond the next turn. And he knew they had only taken the first step into it. The wind coming off the river carried a chill, but Alex hardly felt it. His mind was moving too fast, mapping out possibilities, dangers, betrayals yet to come. The city glowed behind them like an indifferent giant, its skyscrapers lit in gold and blue, while here in the shadowed dockside streets, the air felt tight and close, like a lung holding its breath. The wiry-haired man, who still hadn't given his real name, shifted his weight against the brick wall. You said you know where we're going. We're burning time, Hale. Alex met his eyes. The docks. Pier 19. There's a ship leaving in less than an hour for Southport under a foreign flag. It's not on any of their registered watch routes. We get on it, we're ghosts before dawn. Elena gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. She understood. Ghost was good. Ghost was survival. But the quadruplets. Alex's gaze slid to them. Four sets of identical eyes stared back at him, unblinking, steady in a way no child should be. Their silence wasn't from fear. It was calculation. Observation. He realized, with a small jolt, that they had been studying him since the moment he stepped into that alley. You trust them? The wiry-haired man murmured, so low only Alex could hear. No, Alex replied honestly. But I trust what they represent. They moved in quick, purposeful strides, slipping through back streets, past shuttered warehouses and the occasional flicker of a security drone scanning from overhead. Alex knew those drones didn't belong to the city. They belonged to Hale Dynamics, or whatever shadowed network now pulled the company's strings. Pier 19 was quiet, the kind of quiet that always felt more dangerous than noise. The ship loomed at the far end, long weather-beaten, its name scoured off the hull. A single cargo crane stood like a giant metal sentinel, its arms swinging lazily in the night wind. Two men stood at the gangway, their coats heavy and eyes sharp. They weren't dock workers, that much was clear. They clocked Alex's group immediately, and Alex could almost feel the questions forming in their heads. The wiry-haired man stepped forward, speaking in a low, quick exchange Alex didn't fully catch, a blend of coded phrases and numbers. A handshake followed, brief and businesslike. One of the men stepped aside, allowing them through. Once aboard, the ship's deck groaned under their weight. It smelled of salt and oil, the scent thick in the air. A crewman led them below to a dim, narrow cabin. Metal bunks were bolted to the walls. You'll stay here until we're out of territorial waters, the crewman said, his voice low. We don't ask names. We don't answer questions. He left without waiting for acknowledgement. Alex sat on the lower bunk, the portable drive still tucked deep inside his jacket. He could feel the weight of it, not in grams, but in consequence. That data was more than just evidence. It was a loaded weapon. The quadruplets stood together near the cabin door, their heads tilting almost in unison as if listening to some internal signal. Elena noticed too. She moved closer to Alex. You see it? Yeah, he said. They're not normal children, she murmured. They're aware. More aware than any of us. The wiry-haired man snorted. They're prototypes. You think normal rules apply? The ship shuddered as its engines came alive, the low thrum reverberating through the steel walls. Outside, the black water swallowed the city lights. For a while, no one spoke. The movement of the ship was hypnotic, the horizon rocking ever so slightly. Then one of the quadruplets stepped forward. Alex thought it might be the smallest boy, but in the dim light, they were indistinguishable. They'll come for you, the boy said. His voice was quiet but carried a weight far beyond his age. Alex didn't ask who they was. He already knew. They'll come for all of us, Alex said. The boy didn't blink. Then you should be ready. There was something in the way he said it that made Alex feel as if he was the one being tested. The days blurred. The ship made its slow way down the coast, keeping to shadowed routes, avoiding major ports. They docked once in a remote fishing town to refuel and take on supplies. On the third night, the storm hit. It came without warning, a wall of black cloud swallowing the stars, the sea rising like a living thing. The ship pitched violently, waves slamming against the hull with bone-shaking force. Somewhere above deck, a man shouted orders in a language Alex didn't recognize. Then came the sound Alex had been dreading, the distinct thud of a helicopter's rotors. Elena was already at the porthole, her face pale in the flash of lightning. They found us. A searchlight swept the deck, blinding white against the rain. Ropes dropped from the helicopter, black-clad figures sliding down with precision. The wiry-haired man cursed under his breath, pulling a compact weapon from inside his coat. "Time's up." Alex shoved the portable drive into Elena's hands. "If I don't make it." "You will," she cut in sharply. "Because if you don't, none of this matters." The cabin door burst open, and chaos followed. The wiry-haired man fired first, the sharp crack of suppressed shots barely audible over the storm. One soldier dropped. Another lunged into the room, grappling with Elena. Alex grabbed a loose length of steel pipe from the wall and swung hard, the impact jarring up his arms. The quadruplets moved too, but not in fear. In perfect coordination, they slipped past the fight and out into the corridor, vanishing like shadows. "Elena!" Alex shouted, throwing the soldier off her. "We have to get to the bridge," she yelled back. "If they take control of the ship." Another explosion of light and sound shook the air as something heavy crashed onto the deck above. Alex didn't think. He ran. The corridor tilted underfoot as the ship rolled in the waves. Behind him, he could hear the wiry-haired man shouting, covering their retreat. They burst onto the rain-slick deck. The helicopter hovered above like an insect, its rotors kicking up sheets of water. Figures moved through the storm, too many to count. Then Alex saw them, the quadruplets, standing at the very edge of the deck, the sea raging below. They weren't afraid. They were waiting. The smallest boy turned his head just enough for Alex to see the strange calm in his eyes. Then he spoke a single word, one Alex couldn't hear over the storm but felt like a pulse in his skull. The soldiers nearest to them froze. Just stopped. Their weapons hung loose in their hands. One by one, their knees buckled, and they collapsed to the deck. Alex's heart hammered. "What the hell?" "They're not just prototypes," Elena said beside him, her voice tight with awe. "They're something else." The boy looked at Alex again, and in that instant, Alex knew. Whatever the quadruplets were, they weren't under anyone's control but their own. The helicopter swung lower, but before it could reach the deck, the boy raised his hand. The searchlight flickered and died. The rotor sound faltered, then the craft lurched sideways, spinning out over the black water before vanishing into the storm. The deck went still. The only sound was the relentless rain. The quadruplets stepped back from the edge, their faces unreadable. "They'll send more," the boy said simply. Alex felt the truth of it in his bones. When the storm finally passed, the ship limped into Southport under a bruised dawn. The air smelled of wet salt and diesel. The crew, shaken but silent, let them disembark without question. On the dock, Elena handed the portable drive back to Alex. "So, what now?" He looked at the quadruplets. At the wiry-haired man. At Elena. "Now," he said slowly, "we stop running." And for the first time since that night in the restaurant, Alex Hale smiled. Not with relief, but with the fierce clarity of a man who finally knew the shape of the war he was about to fight. The city beyond the port was waking up. Somewhere in its streets, in its hidden rooms, in the corridors of power, the people who had built this nightmare were already moving their pieces into place. But so was he. And this time, he wasn't alone.